The WNBA tips off its 29th season this weekend, and this offseason we've seen all types of changes around the league. There's a new team, rosters were completely overhauled, and 8 first-time WNBA head coaches are going to make their debut, but ain't none of that going to stop the New York Liberty for their quest for back-to-back championships. Our WNBA reporter for the New York Post, Madeline Kenney, is in the studio to talk all things W, and of course the Liberty W and L, wins and losses. I try to, have a little play on words there.
I see what you did there, yeah.
How you feeling? You excited about the season?
Yeah, I'm so ready for it to get started. I've done enough training camp. Let's get it going. Let's get some games.
All right, before we start breaking down the league and the Liberty, is it safe to say that this is the most anticipated opening weekend in the history of this league, I guess, since the inaugural season?
I think so, just because, last year you had Caitlin Clark coming in. This year you have Paige Beckers, but there was also just a lot of changes throughout free agency, and we have a lot of roster overhauls, a lot of new head coaches, and then also you have to understand that in 2026 the league is going to go into a full restart, which I know we'll talk about in a little bit, but yeah, I think it's fair to say that this is the most anticipated. All
right, big anticipation for the back-to-back champs. The defending champs, let me not crown them already. They're going to get those rings tomorrow, Saturday, when they go against the Las Vegas Aces. Also going to be able to hang up that championship banner. But we're talking about a team that has its core back, and they also added a little bit more firepower when they traded for Natasha Cloud. I guess going into game one of this season, compare the rosters from last season. Would you say that this team is better now going into this season? And can this team defend their championship?
I think there's a lot of strengths about this team that they didn't necessarily have last year. Natasha Cloud, she bolsters their defense in a lot of ways. She's an extremely talented perimeter defender, and that was kind of some area that they had issues with last season. My biggest concern is Benijah being out with a knee injury. Okay. She won't play at all this season. So you're going to have to see a lot of jumps with certain players. You want Marine to really excel and take that leap, and she's looked really good in preseason. Phoebish is another one that you're going to have to watch. I think that she's a player that can really excel. We saw what she did in the playoffs when she got to be in the starting lineup. She, in a larger role, she did really well. And so I think that, there's other players that are going to be able to step up without Benijah. But I think there are strengths and there's a little bit of weaknesses to this roster.
When we talk about players needing to step up, that means that your stars are going to have to carry a team at the beginning of the season. A lot of these teams don't get a lot of, time on the court together because of having such a short training camp. So is it safe to say that for the success of the beginning of the season, there's a lot of pressure on their big three to kind of come in and pick up from where they left off from last season?
Definitely, and I think the preseason games that we saw, obviously the Liberty went 1-1. That wasn't the full picture of what they want to do. They were tinkering with lineups. Brianna Stewart didn't play the first game. Starters, a lot of them didn't play the second half, and so I think, but you're going to rely on them a lot because they're going to have to carry the team. They're going to have to set the tone. I mean, there's still some issues defensively. I think there was, again, miscommunication in the second preseason game. Okay. And so I think that they're going to have to set that identity and, really carry the team early on.
You mentioned some of the miscommunications and the defense needing to tighten up. Going into this season, what other question marks do you have around this team?
I really am excited to see Natasha Cloud and Sabrina Ionescu and how they'll play off of each other. I think, being able to have Natasha Cloud allows Sabrina to play off the ball more, and I think that that's going to really elevate her offensive game. She's already an elite shooter. We all know that. But I think that she's going to have way more opportunities to really shine as a shooter this season. And the other thing I would say, just going back to defense, I think they just have to find an identity on that end of the ball. Okay. They haven't really established that yet, and so that's something that they're going to have to do really early on, probably within the first two weeks, because 3 players are leaving in June for Eurobasket, which is a whole nother thing that we could talk about later.
The Liberty, they're not the only team that got better in the offseason. Again, like I mentioned at the beginning of this segment, we've seen a complete roster overhaul when it comes to the league. Which teams out there could take advantage of these question marks that surround the Liberty? Who are their biggest threats in terms to winning this championship?
I think that Minnesota Lynx are coming back with a lot of vengeance, and Nafisa Collier, a lot of people think that she's going to have an MVP caliber season just with the work that she's put in, how good she looked at Unrivaled. So I think that that's a team that will really be competitive. Las Vegas Aces getting Jewel Lloyd, that gives them a whole another look. They have Chelsea Gray too back, and so Aces are going to be really good. And then I think Indiana is still a year away from contending for a title. I say that with the caveat as we don't know who's going to come back next season. But I do think that that is another team that can really surprise some people this season.
So the league should be on notice when it comes to the Fever. You say they may not be there in terms of competing for a championship, but you feel like they could pick up to where they left off for the second half of the WNBA season and make a lot of noise.
Totally. And, you mentioned roster overhauls, and that's a team that, they brought in a lot of veteran players, proven championship-winning players. And, Dewana Bonner, they have Natasha Howard. A lot of the issues that they had last season defensively, they were able to shore up some of those things. And I also think Caitlin Clark is just, going to continue to elevate her game.
Do you think, you say that, but do you think she's got so much pressure on her going into that sophomore season that we could potentially see her kind of step back in her production early in the season?
I think that's a really good question. I think she has the potential to take that leap forward. Some people have said, she has the potential to be a most improved player of the year. What that'll look like, considering she was first team all WNBA last year, I don't know. That's scary to think about if she's most improved. But I think, she got stronger this offseason, and she'll be better able to handle the physicality that she'll be met with when she's on the court.
You mentioned everyone pretty much being a free agent this next offseason going into the 2026 season. Do you feel like that could be a distraction with everything? Like, first and foremost, can you break down next offseason and what's going to go down with the league? And then two, do you think that could be a distraction for a lot of the players, coaches, and franchises?
Yeah, so the big thing that's looming over this season is the collective bargaining agreement. Negotiations remain ongoing, and after this season, the current CBA is going to expire. And so players have said that they're willing to stay at the bargaining table as long as it takes for them to get a fair and right deal for both sides. And, that includes like increased salaries and everything. And so knowing that a new CBA is going to be coming, a lot of players decided to only sign 1-year deals or have deals that end, after the 2025 season. And so you're going to see majority of the league is going to be free agents. I think one GM said that it was like equivalent to an NFL fantasy football draft. So very chaotic, can be very distracting, but I think if you're a team like the Liberty or the Minnesota Lynx or even the Vegas Aces, like, you don't know what next season will bring, what the offseason will bring. You don't know who's going to be back. So you've really got to capitalize on this championship window. Final thought, Maddie, what's your thoughts going into tip-off tonight to tip this new season off? I'm excited. I think that there's going to be some teams that are going to turn some heads this season. I'm really excited to see how Paige, transitions from the college game to the pros. I know that she didn't get a lot of rest between winning a national championship, and then here she is with the Dallas Wings. I'm really excited about what Nafisa Collier does. I'm excited about the Liberty. Well, there's so many good storylines with this season. Unfortunately for Paige, she doesn't get an Olympic break like Caitlin Clark did last year because she needed that. I can't imagine going to a national championship and then a week or two later going into training camp as a professional athlete. Yeah. Absolutely. Well, thanks for coming in, hanging out with us, and have fun this season. Thank you so much for having me.